Ethan Carter, a man who measured his life in stock tickers and server uptime, found a rare moment of stillness, his gaze sweeping across the San Francisco Bay from his Presidio Heights penthouse office at 30 years old. He orchestrated a tech empire that dictated the whims of Silicon Valley. The setting sun bled through the iconic fog, casting long shadows from the Golden Gate Bridge and reflecting off the glass facade of the Salesforce Tower. In the distance, his quiet reflection was shattered by the sharp, insistent buzz of his phone on the polished redwood desk. Unknown number, Ethan hesitated. Years of building his fortress of a life had taught him that unscreened calls were rarely conduits of good news, yet a strange impulse in that moment made him swipe to answer. "Ethan Carter. Hi, Dad. Can you come pick me up from school, please?" The world juddered to a halt. The glass of single malt scotch he was holding slipped, shattering against the Italian marble with a sound that echoed the fracture in his reality. The child's voice on the line sent a jolt through his system that no market fluctuation ever had. Who is this?" he managed to get out, his usually commanding tone reduced to a shaky whisper. "I'm Owen. I'm 5. The small voice was a mix of urgency and a fear that was palpable, even through the phone. "My teacher, Miss Jenny, is helping me call because my mom, Madison, didn't pick me up today. She's sick." Madison? The name was a ghost, instantly transporting him back 6 years to a sweltering, magical summer in Savannah, Georgia that had rewired his soul, though he hadn't understood its permanence at the time. Dinners under Spanish moss, slow walks through historic squares, promises whispered beneath a canopy of stars. And then her abrupt vanishing act that had been an unsolved equation in his mind until this very second. Owen, the name was a breath, a prayer. 5 years, his mind, a machine built for calculation, did the math automatically, each number a gavel blow against the walls of his conscience. Where exactly are you? While the boy recited the school's address in Queens, New York, Ethan was already in motion, his body running on pure instinct, while his mind was a maelstrom of code. He couldn't debug. Dad? He was a dad? The word ricocheted in his head, a feedback loop of deafening intensity. "I'm coming to get you right now, Owen. Don't go anywhere." On the private jet to JFK, his hands gripped the leather armrests so tightly his knuckles were white. For the first time in nearly a decade, the formidable Ethan Carter was utterly, terrifyingly out of control. Memories of Madison flooded him. Her vibrant laugh, the way she would tuck a stray curl behind her ear, their arguments about art versus commerce. How could she have concealed something this monumental? The elementary school in Queens soon came into view. A cheerful brick building that seemed to mock the chaos raging inside him. In the playground, a single child sat waiting on a bright red bench, a dinosaur backpack at his feet. Beside him, a young woman, who had to be Miss Jenny, kept a protective hand on his shoulder. Ethan stepped out of the black town car on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else. Each step toward the boy felt like crossing a chasm. When their eyes finally met, it was like looking at a photograph from his own childhood, the same intense green eyes, the same unruly dark hair, even the tiny mole just above the right eyebrow. A Carter family signature. Dad? Owen's voice was a trembling thread of hope and fear that unraveled Ethan's last defenses. "Hi, Owen?" It was all he could say, his throat tight with a data stream of emotions he'd never had to process before. The boy stood up, hesitant, then, in a burst of pure, uncalculated impulse, ran and wrapped his arms around Ethan's legs. The simple, innocent gesture demolished the firewall around Ethan's heart. He knelt to the boy's level, his son, and returned the hug, feeling the small body trembling against his. Miss Jenny approached, explaining that Madison had been rushed to the hospital that morning. Before losing consciousness, she had told a neighbor to find Ethan's business card in a special box. The frightened boy had insisted on speaking to his father himself as Ethan signed the necessary paperwork to take Owen. 1,000 questions compiled in his mind. Why had Madison kept this secret for so long? How severe was her illness? What would his life, so meticulously curated, look like with a 5-year-old child he'd just met? In the car, Owen chattered about his mom, his school, his favorite dinosaurs. Each word a new pixel in the image of a life Ethan hadn't known was missing pieces. Glancing in the rearview mirror, he saw the boy clutching his dinosaur backpack, his eyes so achingly familiar. Heavy with worry for his mother, Ethan Carter, the man who had built an empire by predicting market trends and user behavior, was now navigating completely uncharted territory. But as he drove toward the hospital, a single, undeniable certainty began to form in his heart. His life would never be the same after that unexpected phone call. And surprisingly, that didn't scare him nearly as much as it should have. The Pacific Heights Medical Center loomed against the San Francisco night, its windows like 1,000 illuminated eyes. Ethan held Owen's hand as they passed through the automatic doors of the emergency room. The sterile, antiseptic smell, a stark contrast to the salty air outside. The boy squeezed his hand, and Ethan realized he wasn't the only one with a racing heart. At the front desk, a weary nurse directed them to the 5th floor. Oncology. The word hit Ethan like a denial-of-service attack. Was that why Madison had disappeared? Was this the reason for 6 years of silence? "Are you a relative of Miss Clark?" asked Dr. Sarah Chen, a young-looking oncologist with the eyes of a seasoned veteran. Ethan hesitated, glancing at Owen, who was now being entertained by a nurse in the waiting area. "I'm the father of her child." The doctor's expression softened into something grave. "Madison has an advanced-stage lymphoma. She refused treatment for a long time, focusing only on alternative therapies. By the time she finally sought conventional medical help," she paused, letting the weight of the words land. The cancer had already spread considerably. Ethan felt the floor drop out from under him. Watch the prognosis, without immediate aggressive treatment. "She has weeks, maybe a month." Dr. Chen was direct, though her tone was gentle, with intensive chemotherapy. "We can try to extend that, but I need to be honest. The chances aren't good." Before Ethan could process the data, a sharp voice cut through the hallway's quiet hum. "And what are you doing here?" Patty Johnson, Madison's mother, advanced on him like a gathering storm. At 60, she had the same weary but proud bearing he remembered from their brief, tense encounters in Savannah. Her face was a mask of fury and grief. "How dare you show up after all this time?" she hissed, her voice low for Owen's sake, but dripping with a venom that stung. "You ruined her life, Mrs. Johnson." Ethan kept his composure, though his own anger was beginning to spike. "I only found out about Owen today. Madison never told me she was pregnant, and why would she? So you could abandon her the same way you did when you found out she was just an artist from Queens, a nobody in your precious family's eyes." The words were like slaps. It was true that his family, especially his father, had been cruel to Madison when they discovered their relationship. The class and culture gap had been a scandal in their rarefied world. But he never knew she was pregnant when she disappeared. "I never abandoned her," he said, his voice raw. "She vanished, changed her number, her address. I looked for her, after your father humiliated her, after your mother offered her money to disappear." Patty gave a harsh, mirthless laugh. Madison had too much pride to accept scraps from the Carters. The revelation hit him like a physical blow. His parents had interfered, meddled without his knowledge. A cold rage began to build in his chest, but it was cut short by a small voice. "Grandma, can I see Mom now?" Patty's entire demeanor shifted instantly as she knelt to hug her grandson. Ethan used the moment to recalibrate, his mind racing to process the new information. "Come on, dear." Patty took Owen's hand. "But remember, Mom's very tired, so we need to be extra quiet." Ethan followed them into the room, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. Madison was a ghost in the hospital bed. Her face, once so full of life and defiance, was now pale and drawn. The vibrant dark hair he had loved to run his fingers through was gone, likely a casualty of treatment. But when her eyes fluttered open at their entrance, they still held the fiery spark that had first captivated him. "Owen," Her voice was a mere whisper, but it was filled with a universe of love. Then her gaze found Ethan's, and tears began to trace paths down her cheeks. "Ethan, I'm sorry, Mom. Don't cry." Owen scrambled carefully onto the bed, snuggling beside her. "Look, I found Dad, just like you told me to." Ethan approached the bed, his heart torn between anger at her deception and the overwhelming pain of seeing her like this. "Why didn't you tell me? Not here," Madison murmured, stroking Owen's hair. "Not now." In the days that followed, Ethan was a whirlwind of action. He brought in the best oncology specialists in the country, initiated legal proceedings for paternity, and began the seismic task of reconfiguring his life around Owen. The DNA test was a mere formality. One look at the boy's sharp, intelligent eyes, and you could see the Carter code running in his veins. His family's reaction was predictable. His mother, Eleanor Carter, tried denial at first, but when confronted with the evidence of her interference years ago, she dissolved into guilty tears. His father, Clifford Carter, remained a fortress of disapproval. But Ethan no longer cared about his input. "You're throwing away your future over a mistake from the past," Clifford thundered during one tense dinner. "No, Dad," Ethan replied calmly, standing. "I'm finally correcting the mistakes of the past. Owen isn't a mistake. He's my son, and unlike you, I'm not going to let prejudice and pride destroy my family." Amid the chaos, Owen became his anchor. The boy was surprisingly resilient, toggling between moments of profound sadness for his mother and flashes of pure, childlike joy that illuminated the grim hospital corridors. Ethan found himself endlessly fascinated by each new discovery about his son: his love for dinosaurs, his startling aptitude for patterns and numbers, his kind heart that made him befriend the nurses. But at night, when Owen was finally asleep in a hospital armchair, Ethan allowed the full weight of it all to crash down on him: his parents' lies, the 5 years he had lost with his son, and the very real possibility that Madison, the woman he'd never truly managed to scrub from his heart's hard drive, might not live to see Owen grow up. The truth was a painful algorithm, but Ethan Carter was determined to solve it. For Owen, for Madison, and for the man he was finally becoming, Madison Clark had always known how to fight for every inch of ground. She grew up in a small apartment in Queens, where her mother Patty worked 2 jobs to keep them afloat after Madison's father passed away. The apartment's walls were a collage of her dreams, magazine clippings of art museums she longed to visit and city colleges she aspired to attend. From a young age, Madison's brilliance was a fire that her circumstances couldn't extinguish. Her stellar grades and artistic talent earned her a partial scholarship to a CUNY school, where she worked as a barista in a trendy cafe near campus to pay for the rest. It was on one of those shifts, surrounded by the scent of roasted coffee and the clatter of keyboards, that her world collided with Ethan Carter's. "I'm so sorry." Madison had tripped, sloshing latte onto the expensive-looking jacket of the young tech prodigy. She braced for arrogance, but instead was met with a disarmingly kind smile and green eyes that seemed to see past her apron and into her soul. "Only if you promise to let me pay for another cup of coffee, and this time sit with me to drink it," Ethan replied, his sincerity catching her off guard. That moment was the beginning of a whirlwind. Ethan wasn't like the other wealthy patrons. He possessed a genuine curiosity about her world, an empathy that his privileged background hadn't erased. In the weeks that followed, a deep friendship bloomed into a passionate, all-consuming romance. Patty Johnson watched her daughter's relationship with a practiced apprehension. "People like them don't mix with people like us, honey," she warned, her words heavy with a lifetime of disappointments. "They can pretend to be egalitarian in college." But when reality knocks at the door, Madison was determined to prove that their connection could transcend social code. Ethan introduced her to a world of venture capitalists and exclusive launch parties. In return, she showed him a world he'd never known: the authentic spice of a hole-in-the-wall Thai place in her neighborhood, the raw, vibrant energy of a local art gallery. "You make me see the world with new eyes," Ethan confessed one night as they danced in the tiny kitchen of her apartment to a scratchy vinyl record. Their idyllic bubble began to rupture when the Carter family entered the frame. Eleanor Carter, with her tailored suit and icy composure, paid a casual visit to the cafe where Madison worked. "How much?" she asked, her voice devoid of warmth, placing a checkbook on the counter. "What's your price to disappear from my son's life?" Madison felt her world tilt, but she held her ground. "I'm not for sale, Mrs. Carter, and neither is your son." The pressure mounted. Clifford Carter used his influence to quietly question the funding for a community art project Madison was involved in. Whispers started on campus about her being a gold digger. Ethan tried to shield her, but the weight of his family's expectations began to poison even their most private moments. The final blow came during a tense dinner at the Carter Mansion in Presidio Heights. Madison had tried so hard to fit. A new dress bought with weeks of savings, etiquette rules studied online. But none of it mattered when Clifford Carter raised his crystal glass in a toast. To youth he toasted with a cold smile, and to its many fleeting experiences. That night, alone in her Queens apartment, Madison discovered she was pregnant. The positive test trembled in her hands as silent tears streamed down her face. She loved Ethan with every fiber of her being. But her mother's words echoed in her mind. They might eventually accept her, but they would never accept a child. He would always be the bastard grandchild. The bug in the family's pristine code, the decision to leave for Savannah, a place she'd once visited and fallen in love with, was an act of a broken heart. Patty sold the few pieces of jewelry she owned to help with the bus ticket. "Sometimes love means protecting people from themselves," she said, hugging her daughter tightly at the station in Savannah. Madison found work in a small art gallery. Her belly grew, and every kick from the baby was a bittersweet reminder of the man she had left behind. When Ethan found her months later, it felt like a second chance. That summer in Savannah was a dream. Walks under the Spanish moss, kisses on the riverfront, whispered promises in a rented room. Ethan never knew she was carrying his child. Madison planned to tell him. She rehearsed the words 1,000 times, but then Eleanor Carter appeared at the gallery where she worked. "He's about to take over as CEO of the company," Eleanor announced, her polished demeanor a veiled threat. "A scandal now would destroy everything he's built. Is that what you want?" Madison fled again, this time to Boston. Owen was born on a crisp October morning, his green eyes a perfect copy of Ethan's. Every milestone was a fresh stab of guilt, the first smile, the first word, the first step. In each moment, she imagined the joy she was denying Ethan. "Why doesn't Dad live with us?" Owen asked at 3 after seeing his friends at daycare with their fathers. "Sometimes the people we love the most are the ones we have to protect. Even if it hurts," Madison answered, swallowing the lump in her throat. Her return to New York was forced by her illness. She initially dismissed the symptoms: fatigue, unexplained bruises, pains she chalked up to the stress of single motherhood when she finally sought medical help. The diagnosis was a death sentence. Now, lying in her hospital bed, Madison watched Ethan and Owen together, seeing in their shared expressions the legacy she had tried so hard to hide. The silence she had maintained for years was rooted in a profound fear and a fierce love. Fear of prejudice, judgment, and rejection. A love strong enough to sacrifice her own happiness to protect her child. "You were right," she whispered to her mother one evening as Owen slept in Ethan's arms. "They are different from us, but you were also wrong. Sometimes those differences don't matter as much as we think." The roots of her silence were deep, fed by years of social inequality and ingrained prejudice. But now, watching her son build a connection with the father he'd never known, Madison began to realize that maybe, just maybe, some roots could be pulled up to make room for something new to grow. The piercing 6 a.m. alarm was a familiar part of Ethan Carter's routine. What was new was the small, warm body curled up in his sprawling, king-sized bed, surrounded by a herd of dinosaur plushies that had staged a coup on his minimalist decor. Owen had started sneaking into his room at night, especially after long days at the hospital. "Owen, time to get up, buddy." Ethan tried gently, still navigating the user manual for waking a 5-year-old. The response was a muffled groan as Owen burrowed deeper under the high thread count duvet. The transformation of his once sterile Presidio Heights penthouse was startling. Toys were scattered like landmines on the polished concrete floors. Colorful, abstract drawings were taped to the stainless steel refrigerator, and a growing collection of sugary cereals colonized a shelf once reserved for single-origin coffee beans. Mr. Carter, Sarah Peterson, the new nanny, arrived promptly at 7 a.m., a calm, capable 28-year-old with a degree in early childhood education and glowing references. She had been vetted through a process as rigorous as any executive hire. "Please call me Ethan," he replied, fumbling with a tie while trying to pack a Jurassic Park lunchbox. "Owen is still refusing to take a bath, and I have a board meeting in." He glanced at his watch. 40 minutes, Sarah took command with a quiet efficiency that made Ethan feel both immense gratitude and a touch of inadequacy. Within minutes, she had Owen giggling and cooperating with the morning routine. A feat of diplomacy Ethan was still trying to master. The changes at the office were just as profound. His workspace now included a small corner with a drawing table and a stack of children's books. His executive assistant, Margaret, who for 5 years had managed his life with military precision, was now learning to juggle the CEO's schedule at Carter Enterprises with parent-teacher conferences and pediatric appointments. "Your 3 p.m. meeting has been switched to a video conference," Margaret informed him, handing over a stack of reports. "That way you can attend Owen's appointment with Dr. Williams." News of Ethan's sudden fatherhood rippled through Silicon Valley. Some board members voiced concern about his divided focus. Charles Bennett, his mentor and the board's chairman, called him in for a private chat. "Ethan, you've built something extraordinary here," Charles began, gesturing to the panoramic view of the bay. "But in the past few days, you've canceled 3 important investor dinners." "My son needed me," Ethan replied simply, surprised by how easily the words came. "And he will keep needing me. Carter Enterprises needs you too," Charles argued, his brow furrowed. "And it will have me, but not at the expense of my son." Ethan stood, straightening his jacket. "By the way, I've got to go. Owen has a doctor's appointment in half an hour." Dr. Williams was a warm, middle-aged pediatrician whose initial assessment of Owen was thorough, especially given the emotional upheaval of his recent life changes. "He's adapting surprisingly well," she explained, while Owen played with a stethoscope in the corner. "But we need to watch for any signs of anxiety or regression." His mother's situation, combined with all these transitions, Ethan absorbed every word. His mind, once dedicated to processing complex data streams and corporate strategies, now expanding to include medical terms, emotional needs, and developmental milestones. The hearing for temporary custody was scheduled for the following week. His lawyer assured him it would be a formality, especially with the positive DNA test and Madison's current condition. Still, Ethan found himself obsessively reviewing every document, every medical report, every psychological evaluation. Evenings became his favorite part of the day. After dinner, which he was learning to cook with mixed results, came bath time, followed by story time. Owen had a particular love for dinosaur stories, and Ethan discovered he could use his knowledge of tech startups to create surprisingly effective analogies about different species. "The T-Rex was like the CEO of the Jurassic world," he explained one night, making Owen giggle with his roaring impressions. "But you know who really controlled the market, the small and agile velociraptors." Sarah proved to be more than a nanny. She was an invaluable ally. Besides caring for Owen, she helped establish routines, suggested age-appropriate activities, and offered guidance on how to handle the boys' increasingly frequent questions about Madison. "Why does Mom have to stay in the hospital?" Owen asked one night, his small voice thick with worry. Ethan felt his heart constrict. "The doctors are trying to make her better," he replied, choosing his words carefully. "And in the meantime, we'll take care of each other, okay?" Daily visits to the hospital became their new normal. Though weakened by treatment, Madison tried her best to be present and cheerful for Owen. Ethan would watch them, marveling at the deep bond between mother and son, and feeling the ache of the time he had lost. Late at night, in his home office, Ethan often found himself staring at old photos of Madison he'd managed to find. The vibrant, defiant young woman in the images was a painful contrast to her current reality. Guilt and regret were a heavy cloak in those quiet hours, always interrupted by the sound of small footsteps in the hallway. "Dad," Owen would appear at the door, clutching his favorite T-Rex plushie. "I can't sleep," and once again, Ethan Carter, the feared titan of Silicon Valley, would set aside spreadsheets and quarterly projections to crawl into his son's bed, telling stories about a world where dinosaurs roamed the earth and all problems could be solved with a hug and a goodnight kiss. His transformation didn't go unnoticed by his team. "You're different, Ethan. More human." Amanda Chen, his CFO, remarked during a meeting. He smiled, adjusting a tie that had a faint stain of grape juice on it. "I have a great teacher," he replied, his phone buzzing with another picture Sarah had sent of Owen, this time showing off a colorful creation made of modeling clay. The adaptation was far from seamless. There were days of frustration, sleepless nights, and moments of sheer panic where he questioned if he was doing anything right. But then Owen would smile, or ask a startlingly insightful question, or simply hug him for no reason at all. And Ethan knew he was exactly where he was supposed to be. A carved wooden box sat on Ethan's desk, its contents a scattered mosaic of a life he was trying to piece together. Patty Johnson had finally, grudgingly, given him the chest Madison had kept. It held a meticulously curated archive of the past 6 years. She kept everything, Patty explained, her voice thick with unshed tears. Every moment, every decision she wanted Owen to understand someday. Ethan picked up the first photograph. Madison, pregnant in Savannah, her face illuminated by the warm glow of a gas lamp on a historic street. The date on the back hit him like a physical shock. It was taken during their brief magical reunion. She was already carrying Owen, and he had been completely oblivious. A faded blue journal caught his eye. The first entries were from when Madison discovered she was pregnant. Positive, the word that changed everything. "I'm sitting on the bathroom floor, test in hand, thinking about Ethan, how his eyes light up when he talks about his latest project, how his family looks at me like I'm a bug in their perfect code. How can I condemn our child to grow up seen that way?" The following pages chronicled her escape to Savannah, her struggle to find work, the lonely nights in a tiny apartment above a noisy bar. There were receipts for art supplies, resumes sent to local galleries, and finally a letter offering her a part-time job at a small gallery. "Mrs. Dubois lets me sit between shifts when my feet swell too much. She lost a son years ago. She says I'm her little New York miracle. Today the baby kicked while I was dusting a sculpture." I thought of Ethan, about how he'd love to feel it. Ethan found a series of unsent letters, all addressed to him. Some were filled with raw, furious anger, others with a heartbreaking longing. The most poignant one was dated the day Owen was born. "Our son was born today. Ethan, he has your eyes, your chin, even that little mole above your eyebrow. The nurse asked about the father, and I lied. I said you died." In some ways, I feel like part of me really has died, the part that believed love was enough to overcome any obstacle. There were daycare reports from Boston, where Madison had moved when Owen was 6 months old, a contract for freelance graphic design work, receipts from online courses she took at night, while a neighbor watched Owen Mrs. O'Malley in the apartment next door as a saint. She watches Owen like he's her own grandson, teaches him bits of Gaelic, insists he tries every Irish dish she makes. Sometimes, when I see her with him, I feel a pang of guilt for keeping him from his real grandparents. Ethan found a photo of a 2-year-old Owen dressed as a dinosaur, standing next to an elderly woman with a kind, wrinkled face. On the back, Madison had written, "Owen and Mrs. O'Malley, Daycare Halloween Party." 2023, a brown envelope held medical documents, the first tests that detected Madison's illness. Her notes in the margins revealed her initial despair and her fierce resolve to fight. "Alternative therapies seem promising. I can't afford to be sick now. Owen needs me. I need to make sure he's okay." Before, Patty entered Ethan's office quietly, finding him surrounded by a sea of children's drawings. "She kept every scribble," Patty commented, her voice softer now. "She said that one day you'd want to see every moment you missed." "Why didn't she reach out when she got sick?" Ethan asked, his voice hoarse. Patty sighed, picking up a photo of Madison holding a newborn Owen. Pride, maybe. Or fear. You built an empire. Ethan, she read about you in magazines, saw your success grow. How could she show up after all that time? Sick, needing help. A small black notebook revealed Madison's survival strategies, meticulously planned budgets, expense lists, savings plans. Every penny was accounted for, every purchase justified. Yet there was always a small amount set aside for the Owen College Fund. I want him to have choices, one note read, so he never feels as limited as I did. Among the pages, Ethan found a newspaper clipping about himself, a feature on his company's latest IPO. Madison had circled his photo and written beside it, "He looks happy. Maybe I made the right choice." Another envelope contained pictures from all of Owen's birthday parties. In each one, Madison looked thinner, paler, but her smile for her son remained radiant. "That's when the symptoms got worse," Patty explained, seeing the look on Ethan's face. She could barely stand during that party, but she insisted on making everything perfect. It was like she knew it would be the last one. Ethan found a small flash drive at the bottom of the box, plugging it into his laptop. He discovered dozens of short videos. Owen learning to walk, speaking his first words, everyday moments that now felt infinitely precious. In one particularly moving video, a 3-year-old Owen asked about his dad. Madison's voice trembled slightly as she answered, "Your dad is a very special man, sweetie. He has a huge heart, even if he doesn't always know it, and I'm sure that if he knew about you, he'd love you more than anything in the world." Ethan paused the video, tears blurring his vision. A sound at the door made him look up. Owen stood there, still in his pajamas, dragging his T-Rex plushie. "Dad, are you sad?" Ethan opened his arms, and Owen ran to him, curling into his lap as if he'd always belonged there. Patty watched, her own eyes glistening. "She always knew you two would find each other," she said gently. She just never imagined it would be like this. Ethan hugged Owen tighter, feeling the immense weight of the lost years, and at the same time a profound gratitude for every moment documented in that box. Madison had preserved their story, keeping the possibility of this reunion alive, even when it seemed impossible. "Want to see some videos of you when you were a baby?" Ethan asked Owen, his voice shaky but smiling. "Was I cute?" Owen asked, already settling in to watch. "Cutest ever," Ethan replied, hitting play on the next video. "And your mom was amazing." As they watched the memories Madison had so carefully preserved, Ethan realized the box didn't just contain a record of lost years, it was a testament to love, sacrifice, and hope. Each item told the story of a woman who had done the impossible to protect her son, ensuring that even in the toughest of circumstances, Owen always knew he was deeply loved. "Are you sure you don't want me to go with you?" Sarah asked, helping Ethan pack the last few items into a small Spider-Man suitcase, a whole weekend alone with him. "I need to do this," Ethan replied, checking for the third time the list he'd made. Extra clothes, motion sickness meds, healthy snacks, and some not-so-healthy ones, first aid kit, favorite toys. It felt like preparing for a product launch. Not 2 days in Malibu, the idea for the trip had come from Owen's child therapist. "He needs exclusive time with you, without distractions," she had advised, "a space for you two to build your own memory." Now, standing at the door with their bags, Ethan wondered if he was ready. Owen, on the other hand, was vibrating with excitement, bouncing from foot to foot with his T-Rex plushie tucked under his arm. "Can we see whales, Dad?" my teacher said. "Sometimes they swim near the shore. We'll try, champ." Ethan smiled, the fear slowly being replaced by a spark of anticipation. The drive down the Pacific Coast Highway was an adventure in itself. Owen possessed a natural talent for asking questions Ethan had never considered. Why is the sky blue? How do birds know where they're going? If dinosaurs still existed, could they ride in a car? Ethan, accustomed to answering complex questions about algorithmic efficiency, found himself Googling explanations at rest stops to understand why clouds don't fall. Owen's insatiable curiosity was infectious, making Ethan see the familiar coastline through new eyes. The Malibu beach house, usually reserved for sterile business meetings and high-profile parties, erupted with life. Within hours, the pristine deck was a chaotic landscape of buckets, shovels, carefully selected shells, and half-finished sandcastles. "Look, Dad, it's a Sandosaurus," Owen declared proudly, pointing at a lopsided mound of sand that, with a great deal of imagination, could be seen as a dinosaur. Ethan, still in his designer jeans, didn't hesitate to get on his knees in the sand to help. His hands, more accustomed to a keyboard, now molded towers and moats with surprising dedication. Lunch was a diplomatic negotiation worthy of his best boardroom tactics. "How about a deal?" Ethan proposed. Switching into negotiation mode, 3 pieces of broccoli in exchange for ice cream for dessert. Owen considered the offer with comical gravity. 5 scoops of ice cream, 2 scoops, and extra whipped cream. "Deal?" Owen stuck out his tiny hand to seal the agreement, mimicking the gestures he'd seen his dad make on work video calls. At night, they lay on beach chairs, looking up at a sky unpolluted by city lights. Ethan discovered his knowledge of the tech world could be surprisingly useful in explaining constellations. "See those 3 stars in a row? That's Orion's belt. Think of him as the CEO of the sky, organizing all the other stars, like you organize your company, something like that." Ethan smiled. "But I think I prefer organizing constellations with you." The second day brought a classic California drizzle, forcing them indoors. Ethan discovered his high-tech home theater, once used only for screening investor presentations, was perfect for building blanket forts and marathoning dinosaur movies. "Dad?" Owen called out during a particularly thrilling scene in Jurassic Park. "Do you think Mom will like our fort when she gets better?" The question caught Ethan off guard, his heart clenching. "I'm sure she will, champ, and we can build many more for her." The rain also led to unexpected discoveries. Ethan found Owen quietly at his desk, drawing meticulously. "What are you doing?" "A chart," Owen answered casually. "Just like yours, but mine's about dinosaurs." Ethan moved closer to see a colorful drawing where different dinosaurs were categorized by size, with numbers carefully written beside them. His son had inherited more than just his looks. They took dozens of photos over the weekend. Ethan, who once only appeared in formal portraits for tech magazines, now had a phone full of clumsy selfies, ice cream-smeared grins, and heroic poses next to sandcastles. On Sunday afternoon, as they packed to leave, Owen found a particularly beautiful abalone shell on the beach. "Can we take it to Mom?" he asked, his green eyes shining with hope. "Of course," Ethan said, storing it carefully. "How about we take one last picture to show her?" The photo captured a perfect moment, father and son on the beach, hair tossed by the sea breeze. Identical smiles, and the iridescent shell held between them like a shared treasure. It wasn't a technically perfect photo, slightly blurry, the angle off. But for Ethan, it was the most valuable picture he'd ever taken. Back in the car, Owen fell asleep almost immediately, clutching his T-Rex. Ethan drove in silence, the rhythm of the waves a soothing soundtrack. How was it possible that in such a short time this small person had become the central axis of his universe? He remembered his initial fears about the weekend, the anxiety of not knowing what to do, of failing, of making mistakes. Now those concerns seemed distant. Sure, he'd made mistakes. He'd served cereal with orange juice, forgotten sunscreen on the first morning, and nearly had a heart attack when Owen disappeared for 2 minutes on the beach. He was just behind a lounge chair, but each mistake was a lesson, each awkward moment a precious memory, each laugh a bond being woven. Before heading back into the city, Ethan made one last stop at the hospital. Madison, though exhausted, smiled as she saw the photos and held the shell like a rare jewel. "He has your smile," she commented softly, looking at the images. "And your heart, too." Ethan held her frail hand, thinking about how life could pivot so completely in a matter of weeks. 2 weeks ago. He was a lonely workaholic now. He was a father, a student of childhood, a builder of sandcastles, and a budding dinosaur expert. and for the first time in his adult life, he felt he was finally doing something that truly mattered. Pacific Heights Medical Center felt different that morning. The usually bustling corridors were hushed, and a sense of gravity hung in the air. When Ethan arrived for the meeting with the medical team, Patty was already there, her hands twisting a worn handkerchief. "Where's Owen?" she asked, her voice tight. "With Sarah. I thought it best he not be here for this." Dr. Chen entered the conference room, followed by two other specialists, Dr. Marcus Stevens, a surgical oncologist, and Dr. David Park, an expert in bone marrow transplants. Their serious expressions were a grim forecast. The last round of chemotherapy didn't have the effect. "We'd hoped," Dr. Chen began, spreading out a series of scans on the table. "The lymphoma is spreading faster than we can contain it, Doctor." Stevens pointed to several dark spots on the images. "These show new areas of disease. The pressure on vital organs is increasing." Ethan studied the images, his mind, trained to analyze data, struggling to process information. His heart was rejecting. "What are our options?" "There's an experimental procedure," Dr. Park explained, opening a file on his tablet. "A new approach combining immunotherapy with a bone marrow transplant. It's highly risky, especially given Madison's weakened state. But it's our only real chance," Patty finished, her voice breaking. The discussion that followed was a torrent of statistics, risk factors, and medical protocols. Ethan asked dozens of questions, taking notes as if the solution could be found in the details. "How long do we have to decide?" he finally asked. "The surgery needs to happen in the next 3 days if we choose that route," Dr. Stevens replied. "After that, the risk becomes prohibitive." Ethan stood, walking to the window. Outside, life continued. Cars moved, people walked. The sun shone with an indifference that felt like a personal insult. "We need to talk to her," Patty said softly. "It's her life." Madison's room was quiet, save for the rhythmic beeping of the monitors. She looked even smaller against the white sheets, but her eyes were still sharp, still defiant. "No need for those funeral faces," she joked weakly as they entered. "I saw Dr. Stevens in the hallway. I know it's time for tough decisions." Ethan held her hand as the doctors explained everything again. Madison listened in silence, her grip tightening on his whenever a particularly harsh detail was mentioned. "What are the real odds?" she finally asked. "Without surgery?" "Just a few weeks," Dr. Chen answered honestly. "With it, a 30% chance of success, and the risks of the surgery itself. They're significant. There's about a 20% chance you might not survive the procedure." The silence that followed was heavy, filled with unspoken fears. Madison broke it. "I need to see Owen before I decide." Half an hour later, Owen burst into the room carrying a new drawing, this one of a T-Rex in a doctor's coat. Madison's face softened, and she made room for him on the bed. "That's a handsome doctor you drew," she commented, running her fingers through his hair. "That's Dr. Rex," Owen explained seriously. "He's the best dinosaur doctor in the world. He'll make you better." Madison glanced at Ethan, tears spilling silently down her cheeks. "Owen, honey, Mom needs a very important surgery to get better, to try to get better. Yes," she took a deep breath. "But it's a hard surgery, and I'm a little scared." Owen considered this, then placed his T-Rex plushie next to her on the bed. "Rex can stay with you. He's really brave and scares away all the fear." Ethan had to turn away to hide his own tears. Patty sobbed quietly in the corner. Later, after Owen had left with Sarah, Madison made her decision. "I'll do the surgery," she announced, "not because of the 30% chance, but because of the 100% certainty that I have to try." For him, the next 2 days were a blur of activity. Ethan leveraged his network to ensure the best equipment and professionals were available. Patty practically moved into the hospital, overseeing every detail. The night before the surgery, Ethan returned to find Madison awake, staring out the window. "Can't sleep?" he asked, sitting beside her. "I was thinking about all the things I still want to do," she replied. "All the moments I want to have with Owen, his first day of school, his graduation, his—" "Hey," Ethan interrupted gently, taking her hand. "You'll have all that. You're the strongest person I know." Madison gave a sad smile. If something goes wrong tomorrow, Madison." "No, I have to say this." She squeezed his hand. "If anything happens, I want you to know that I never stopped loving you. Every decision I made, no matter how wrong it might look now, was out of love for both of you." Ethan leaned in and kissed her forehead softly. "I know, and we love you too. So fight tomorrow. Okay? Fight with everything you have." Early the next morning, the medical team began to prep. Dr. Stevens reviewed the plan with his staff, while Dr. Park supervised the final tests. Owen, still in his pajamas, was brought in for one last hug. "Remember that Rex is with you, Mom," he whispered in her ear, watching Madison's gurney being wheeled toward the operating room. Ethan held Owen in his arms, both of them waving until she disappeared through the double doors. The little dinosaur plushie was perched on her chest like a talisman of hope. Now came the hardest part, the waiting. And for the first time in his life, Ethan Carter, the man who controlled everything, could do nothing but pray. Clifford Carter's office was exactly as Ethan remembered it, imposing, cold, and designed to intimidate. Sitting behind the massive mahogany desk, his father wore the same stern expression he'd worn for Ethan's entire life. Eleanor was by his side, her pearls a stark white against her black dress. "We found this in the old safe." Clifford slid a yellowed envelope across the desk. "Your mother thought you should see it." Ethan opened it with trembling fingers. Inside were documents dating back 6 years, bank transfers, confidentiality agreements, and most damningly, detailed private investigator reports about Madison during her pregnancy in Savannah. "You spied on her?" he asked, his voice shaking with a rage he could barely contain. "We protected the family's interests," Clifford corrected, his tone like ice. "She was pregnant when she went to Savannah. Our investigators confirmed it, and you didn't think I had a right to know," Eleanor interjected, her voice trembling. "We wanted to protect you, dear. Carter Enterprises was at a critical point. A scandal like that. A scandal." Ethan stood up so fast his chair scraped loudly against the floor. "We're talking about my son. 5 years. You robbed me of 5 years with my child. She took the money," Clifford stated, as if that closed the case. "No, Dad?" She refused. Ethan shook the documents. "It's right here, in your own reports. She refused every cent you offered." The silence that followed was deafening. Ethan could hear his own heart pounding as the pieces clicked into place. His parents' strange trips to the South, their veiled questions about Madison over the years, his mother's guilty expression the first time Owen's name was mentioned. "Did you know she was sick?" he finally asked. His parents' shared silence was the only answer he needed. "My God." Ethan ran a hand through his hair. "For how long, our contacts in Boston informed us about a year ago," Eleanor admitted softly. When she started looking for treatment, each word was a physical blow. A year? She was dying for a year, and they knew, without another word. He turned and left the office, ignoring his mother's frantic calls behind him. In the elevator, his hands shook so violently he could barely dial his lawyer's number. "Marcus, I need you to review some documents, immediately." Hours later, in his own office, Ethan was surrounded by paperwork. The extent of his parents' interference was staggering. There was evidence they had actively sabotaged Madison's attempts to contact him, blocking emails, intercepting letters. "They had no legal right to do this," Marcus explained. "Technically, we could file a lawsuit." "No," Ethan interrupted. "I don't want a public scandal. Owen is already going through enough." His phone vibrated. A message from Sarah with a photo of Owen sleeping, holding tight to his T-Rex. The image grounded him, reminding him of what truly mattered. What are our options regarding custody? Marcus began to explain the legal process, but was cut off by an urgent call from the hospital. Ethan's blood ran cold when he saw Dr. Chen's name, Mr. Carter. "There's been a complication with Madison." The rest of the day was a nightmare of hospital corridors, medical jargon, and impossible choices. Madison had developed a severe post-surgical infection, complicating her already fragile state. "We need authorization for an experimental treatment," Dr. Stevens explained. "As Owen's father, and, well, given Madison's current situation, You're the closest person she has besides her mother, Doctor," Chen added gently. Ethan looked through the ICU glass at Madison, a figure lost in a web of tubes and machines. Patty was by her side, whispering words of encouragement Madison couldn't possibly hear. "What did she decide about custody?" he asked Dr. Chen before the surgery. The doctor handed him a sealed envelope. "She left this for you." Inside was a handwritten letter and legal documents, all signed. Madison had prepared for the worst, ensuring Owen would stay with Ethan. But there was more, a detailed account of all her attempts to contact him over the years and how each one had been systematically blocked. "When I discovered your parents were intercepting my attempts to reach out," she wrote, "I decided it was better to protect Owen from that world of manipulation and power plays. Maybe it was selfish of me, but my fear of watching my child be treated like an inconvenience, a mistake to be hidden, it was bigger than anything else. Forgive me for not fighting harder." Ethan let the tears fall freely, reading pages of explanations, regrets, and above all, hope. Hope that he would be the father Owen deserved, that he would protect his son from the very forces that had driven them apart. "Mr. Carter, Doctor." Stevens's voice brought him back to the present. "We need your decision on the procedure." Ethan looked again at Madison, then at the photo of Owen on his phone. So many decisions had been made without his consent. Now he finally had the power to make the right one. "Do whatever it takes to save her," he said, his voice firm. "I'm not letting my son lose his mother, not again." As he signed the authorizations, Ethan knew his life had been irrevocably altered. His priorities, his relationships, his definition of family. Everything was being rewritten in the harsh light of these revelations, and somewhere in the storm of truth and consequence, he was finally becoming the man he was always meant to be. The first sign of Madison waking came 3 days after the last surgery, a faint twitch of her fingers, a subtle change in the rhythm of the heart monitor. Then her eyelids began to flutter open. Ethan, who had dozed off in the chair beside her bed, was jolted awake by the shift in the machine's tone. "Madison," he called out softly. Leaning forward, her eyes opened fully, cloudy with confusion, she scanned the room, her gaze passing over Ethan without a flicker of recognition until it landed on Patty, who had just entered. "Mom," her voice was a dry rasp from the intubation tube. Where am I? At the hospital, dear?" Patty replied, rushing to her side. "You had surgery?" Madison frowned, her mind trying to sort through a fog of disconnected data. "What year is it?" The question sent a chill through Ethan and Patty. Dr. Chen had warned of possible cognitive complications, but the reality was jarring. "It's 2025, honey," Patty answered gently. A flicker of panic entered Madison's eyes. "No, that can't be. I was in Savannah. Ethan felt his heart constrict. Savannah, 6 years ago, when she was pregnant with Owen. Dr. Chen was called immediately, and after a brief evaluation, she confirmed their fears. Madison was suffering from retrograde amnesia, a specific cruel blackout of the last 6 years of her life. It could be temporary, the doctor explained, the trauma of the surgery combined with the prolonged physical and emotional stress. "What about Owen?" Ethan asked quietly. "How do we explain him?" That question was answered far too soon. Owen, brought by Sarah for his daily visit, ran into the room before anyone could stop him. "Mom, you're awake." Madison looked at the boy with a mixture of profound confusion and something deeper, an instinctual pull that bypassed conscious thought. Her hand trembled as she reached out to touch his face, tears welling in her eyes. I have a son," she whispered, looking to Patty for confirmation. Sensing something was wrong, Owen took a small step back. "Mom, you don't remember me?" The raw pain in his voice was a shard of glass in the room. Ethan moved quickly, placing his hands on his son's shoulders. "Mom's a bit confused because of the medicine, buddy," he explained as gently as he could. "We need to help her remember." Okay, in the days that followed, a delicate routine was established. Dr. Patel, a neuropsychologist, was brought in to guide them. "The brain is incredibly resilient," she explained. "The memories aren't necessarily gone, just temporarily inaccessible." Madison's visits were carefully managed. Owen, with a maturity that belied his age, would bring drawings and photos telling her stories of their shared life. "Remember when we made dinosaur cookies, Mom? You let me put blue frosting on all of them." Each story was a tiny bridge being built across a vast canyon. Sometimes Madison would latch onto a feeling, a scent, a fleeting image. Other times the frustration was overwhelming. "It's like I lost an entire life," she confessed during a therapy session. "I have this wonderful son I don't remember raising. And Ethan," she hesitated, "in my last clear memories, we were in Savannah, and now Ethan took an active role, bringing in items from the memory box. You wrote about every important moment," he explained, handing her the faded blue journal, "every first step, every new word, every birthday." Madison would spend hours reading her own handwriting, trying to connect with the woman who wrote those words. Sometimes a phrase would trigger an emotion she couldn't place. It says here, Owen was afraid of thunder. She noted one day that I used to sing "Somewhere Over the Rainbow" to calm him. That night, during a storm, Owen hid in her hospital room, and without thinking, Madison began to hum the song, muscle memory taking over. She remembered the melody, the rhythm, the exact way she used to hold him. The doctors called these memory islands, small fragments of the past emerging through strong emotional triggers. Sarah, the nanny, became a key ally, helping Owen process the situation. "It's like Mom's brain is playing hide-and-seek," she explained, "and we're helping her find all the hidden memories." The metaphor stuck, and Owen turned his mother's recovery into a treasure hunt, bringing objects he thought would spark a memory. "Look, Mom, this is Rex." He introduced his dinosaur plush. "You got him for me on my 4th birthday. Remember?" Madison held the worn toy, and for a moment something flickered. Green. The party had green and brown decorations. Dinosaur-themed. Yes. Owen jumped, and there was a huge T-Rex cake. Small victories like this were cherished, but the road was long and frustrating. Madison's constant presence was both a comfort and a challenge for Ethan, a living reminder of the memories they had lost together. "In my last clear memories, we were deeply in love in Savannah," she admitted in a private session. "Now he's the father of my child, a man who's obviously changed so much while I was gone." Dr. Patel encouraged her to focus on the present. "Love takes many forms," she said. "Sometimes rebuilding is just as important as remembering." And so, day by day, bridge by bridge, a life was slowly being rebuilt through shared stories, old photographs, half-remembered songs, and the hugs that the body recognized even when the mind could not. It was a slow, painful process, but each small connection was a victory, bringing Madison one step closer to the life she had forgotten. Dr. Rachel Martinez, a specialist in cognitive neurology, had an office filled with scans of Madison's brain. The colorful maps of her mind told a complex story. "The retrograde amnesia Madison is experiencing is focal," Dr. Martinez explained, pointing to specific areas on the MRI scans. The trauma of the surgery combined with prolonged stress primarily affected the autobiographical memories of the last 6 years. Ethan and Patty listened intently, while Madison stared at the images as if she could will the memories back into existence. "Interestingly, her procedural memories are intact," the doctor continued. "Madison still knows how to do things she learned during that period, use certain software, cook specific recipes. It's her personal emotional memories that are inaccessible." "It's like I watched a movie of my own life," Madison said softly. "But I can't remember the plot. I only have sensations." Dr. Martinez nodded. "That's a very accurate description. That's why we'll be using a multifaceted approach." The treatment plan was intensive: cognitive behavioral therapy, sessions of transcranial magnetic stimulation, targeted memory exercises, and occupational therapy. Each specialist was a piece of the recovery puzzle. "We need to rebuild not just the memories, but also the emotional context around them," explained Dr. William Chen, her therapist. During sessions, he used guided regression. "Close your eyes." He would say, "You're in Savannah. It's 2019. What do you see? What do you feel?" I'm at the gallery," Madison responded, her voice trembling. I can smell the old wood and the oil paint. I feel sick, the pregnancy, but I can't show it because no one knows yet. These sessions were draining. Sometimes she emerged with tiny fragments. Other times, just frustration. Owen often provided the most significant breakthroughs. One afternoon, he brought in his favorite photo album. "Look, Mom, this is when we went to the zoo." He pointed to a picture of them feeding giraffes. "You were scared, but I wasn't." Madison touched the photo, and for a second, a flicker, the specific smell of the zoo, Owen's laugh, the rough texture of a giraffe's tongue. You were wearing a Spider-Man t-shirt," she whispered, "and you spilled ice cream on it." Owen's eyes lit up. "Yes, and you said it was no big deal because stains are memories, but just as often there were setbacks." During one occupational therapy session, she tried to make dinosaur cookies, a tradition she and Owen once shared. "The dough is wrong," she murmured, tears of frustration welling. "I know it's wrong, but I can't remember how to fix it, Sarah." The nanny stepped in gently. "How about we try a new recipe? Sometimes creating new memories is just as important as recovering the old ones." This simple wisdom became a core part of the therapy. "The brain is incredibly adaptable," Dr. Martinez explained. "Sometimes new neural connections can help awaken old ones." Ethan became a constant presence, a bridge between the past she remembered and the present she was living. "It's strange," Madison confided to Dr. Chen. "I have clear memories of falling in love with him in Savannah. But then there's this void, and now he's this man, this father, who's been through so much I didn't witness." Their daily routine was a constant exercise in rediscovery. Patty turned Madison's hospital room into an informal museum of her missing years. A memory wall covered in photos, birthday cards, and Owen's drawings, all in chronological order. "It's like putting together a puzzle without seeing the picture on the box," Madison remarked, staring at the wall. The scans showed small but steady progress. Areas of her brain that had been dormant were beginning to show activity. "It's as though her brain is creating detours," Dr. Martinez said, "finding alternative paths to access the blocked memories." The transcranial magnetic stimulation, though uncomfortable, began to yield results. Memories started to return, first as disjointed flashes, then in more coherent sequences. "I remember the smell of wet earth," she shared during a session. Owen was 3. It was raining. He wanted to jump in every puddle on the way to school. The emotional toll was immense. Ethan balanced his own pain with the need to be a rock for both of them. "It's like losing her twice," he confided to Patty one night, "first when she left, and now when she's here but doesn't remember our life with Owen." Yet, in the fog, moments of clarity began to shine through. During a music therapy session, Madison found herself playing a lullaby on the piano, a song she used to sing to Owen. "I don't remember learning this," she said, her hands moving automatically. "But my fingers remember." It was in these moments that hope was rekindled. The road to recovery was long, but each fragment of memory was a step toward reconnecting Madison with herself. "Memories are like stars," Dr. Chen would often say. "Even when we can't see them, they're still there, shining somewhere in our consciousness." The therapy room had been transformed into a memory sanctuary, with photos, objects, and a detailed timeline of the past 6 years. "Today we'll try something different," announced Dr. Patel. "Ethan will tell us about the day you two met again in Savannah." Madison settled into a chair as Ethan pulled his closer, their hands finding each other instinctively. "It was a June afternoon," Ethan began, his voice soft. "The gallery was on a sunny corner, filled with Spanish moss and the smell of old history. I was there on business, but something drew me inside." As he spoke, Dr. Patel watched Madison for any sign, a twitch, a change in breathing, a squeeze of her hand. "You were different," Ethan continued. "Thinner, your hair shorter, but your smile, that smile was exactly as I remembered." Madison closed her eyes, letting his words paint the scene. There was music playing," she said hesitantly. "Something old, jazzy." "La Vie en Rose," Ethan confirmed. "Moved, it was playing when I walked in. A small, significant breakthrough. The next sessions focused on different periods, with Owen as an active participant. "Remember this, Mom?" he asked, holding up a crumpled drawing of a purple dinosaur. "You said it was the most beautiful dinosaur in the world, even though it had 3 heads." Madison smiled, touching the drawing. And for a moment, something flickered. The smell of crayons, Owen's laughter, the sun in their Boston apartment kitchen. "You were wearing your yellow apron," she said slowly. "You had flour on your nose because we were baking cookies." "Yes," Owen exclaimed, "dinosaur cookies, and you let me add extra chocolate chips, but the path was also marked by painful setbacks." During one session, Owen showed her how she used to cut his sandwiches into dinosaur shapes. "Not like that, Mom," he gently corrected. "You always made the neck longer." The fork clattered from Madison's hand. "I should remember this," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Why can't I remember?" Ethan found a way to turn these moments into opportunities. He started a new photo album, documenting not just the old memories they were trying to recover, but the new ones they were creating. "Maybe not all the old memories will come back," he explained, "but we can make new ones that are just as special." The approach worked. Madison began to allow herself to live more in the present, even as she worked on the past. A major breakthrough occurred during an aromatherapy session. The scent of lavender triggered a cascade of recollections. "The garden," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "We had a small garden in Boston on the fire escape. Owen helped me water the plants. He had a little blue watering can." Ethan quickly found a photo on his phone of that exact moment, one particularly powerful day. Madison found an old music box, and when she opened it, the melody of "Somewhere Over the Rainbow" filled the room. "This was the first gift I bought for Owen," she said softly, the memory now crystal clear. "I had just found out I was pregnant. I was alone. But when I heard that song in the shop, I knew I'd never really be alone again." A door had been opened. In the following weeks, more memories surfaced, some vivid, some vague, all contributing to reassembling the puzzle of her life. "It feels like the memories have been sleeping," Madison told Dr. Patel, "and little by little, they're waking up. The most significant sign of progress wasn't in the scans, but in the small, everyday moments, like the time she automatically prepared Owen's cereal exactly as he liked it, or completed a story Ethan was telling about Savannah with details she shouldn't have known. The memories were there, slowly but surely, putting themselves back together. One ordinary afternoon marked the first truly clear memory returning. Madison was in the hospital garden, watching Owen play, when the distant sound of a child's laughter triggered something profound. "The playground," she whispered, her eyes wide. "Owen, you fell off the slide. When you were 3, you had on a Spider-Man t-shirt. I ran so fast." Owen paused his game, looking at her. "And you kissed my scraped knee," he added, "and said that a mom's kiss has magic powers." Madison covered her mouth, tears of joy and relief rolling down her cheeks. The memory was vivid. The sunny day, the panic, the relief. After her magic kiss, Dr. Martinez explained that such spontaneous recall was a very positive sign. It's like her brain is finally finding alternative routes to access these memories. In the days that followed, more fragments surfaced. The song that played the first time Owen danced, the flavor of ice cream he always ordered, the texture of his favorite blanket. During a therapy session, she surprised everyone by reciting a rhyme she used at bedtime. "Little Dino, so very brave. Close your eyes. Find dreams to save. Mommy is here, always will be, to watch your sleep, so safe and free." "You used to say that every night," Owen exclaimed, jumping into her arms. "And you do this gentle hair-petting thing?" He guided her hand in a familiar motion. The touch triggered another wave of memories. Stormy nights, lazy Sunday mornings, simple moments that now felt extraordinary. Not all returning memories were happy. One night, she woke up in a panic, recalling the terror of her diagnosis. "I was so scared," she confessed in therapy, "not for me, but for Noah, the thought of leaving him alone." Dr. Patel helped her process these difficult memories, while Ethan and Owen provided the unwavering support she needed. Daily routines took on new meaning as old memories blended with new experiences. One morning, she prepared Owen's breakfast exactly right. "You remembered," he exclaimed. His eyes shining, my body remembered. She smiled. "It's like some things aren't just in my head, but in my heart, too." One particularly meaningful afternoon, Madison was able to tell Owen, without any prompts, the full story of his birth, the rush to the Boston hospital, the overwhelming emotion of holding him for the first time. "You were so small," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "But your eyes were exactly like Ethan's. That was the first time in months I didn't feel alone." Ethan, watching them embrace, realized this was the real miracle, not just recovering old memories, but creating new ones, healing old wounds, and building a future together. And as the sun set, casting golden light on the small family, Madison held her son with one arm and Ethan's hand with the other, feeling truly whole for the first time in a very long time. The family therapy room had a different atmosphere that morning. The winter sun streamed through the large windows, illuminating the space where Madison, Ethan, Owen, and Patty sat with Dr. Sarah Bennett, the therapist guiding them. "Today," Dr. Bennett began, "we're going to talk about the future, Madison." Stronger now, held Owen's hand. "I remember everything now," she began softly. "Every choice, every fear. But I also remember the love. So much love." Ethan leaned forward. "The past has left its mark on all of us, but maybe those scars can make us stronger." Owen, fiddling with his T-Rex, looked between them, "like when I hurt my knee and it left a little scar. You said it was a bravery medal, Mom." Madison smiled through her tears. "Exactly, sweetheart." The session continued, with each member sharing their fears and hopes. Patty spoke of her regret, acknowledging how her own fear had shaped her decisions. "I just wanted to protect you," she admitted, "but sometimes overprotecting can hurt too." The conversation turned practical. Ethan had bought a new home, a warmer, more welcoming space than his minimalist penthouse. "There's a room for each of us," he explained, showing pictures, "and a garden where we can plant lavender, like you had in Boston." "Can we paint it green so it matches dinosaurs?" Owen asked excitedly. "Of course, champ," Ethan grinned. "We can do anything we want, Doctor." Bennett guided them to the topic of the Carter family. "They asked to see us," Ethan said cautiously. "They want to try to make things right." Madison took a deep breath, her memories of their past treatment clear. "People can change," she finally said. We changed. Planning for the future also included Madison's own ambitions. With her health improving, she was considering restarting her design career. "The firm in Boston offered me remote work," she revealed. "I can work from home, be here for Owen, and still keep my independence." Patty, who had been quiet, spoke up. Maybe I could help with Owen after school if you'd like." The offer was more than a practical favor. It was a plea for redemption. "I'd like that," Madison smiled. "Owen loves your stories." As the session ended, Dr. Bennett commented, "Scars don't go away, but they can remind us of how strong we are." Later, at home, Ethan found Madison in the garden, watching Owen play with Sarah. "Sometimes I wonder," she said softly, "if everything that happened was exactly what needed to happen to make us who we needed to be for each other." Ethan took her hand. "Maybe, but now we have all the time in the world to be whoever we want to be." Together, Owen ran to them. "Can we plant flowers now?" Sarah said. "It's the right time." Madison exchanged a smile with Ethan. "Sure, honey. How about we start our own memory garden? We can plant something new for each special moment we share." In the following days, small sprouts began to appear. Lavender for Boston. Daisies, Owen insisted, were dinosaur flowers. Roses Ethan remembered from their first date. It was a new kind of healing, one that came from creating something new together, transforming scars into stories of overcoming and building a future on the strengthened foundations of the past. The sunset painted the San Francisco sky in shades of pink and gold as Ethan and Madison strolled through a park, their fingers entwined. Owen ran ahead, chasing seagulls, his T-Rex plushie held tight. "It's strange," Madison said. "I have all these memories of him growing up, and now I have new memories forming with you in each of them." Ethan squeezed her hand. Maybe this is how it was always meant to be. They stopped by a small pond where Owen was trying to convince his dinosaur to go fishing. They had decided to move into their new home the night before. "Are you sure?" he had asked. "This is a big step." Madison looked around the penthouse, already softened by their presence. "I've never been so sure," she answered. "It's time we start our story." For real now, watching Owen, that certainty only grew. The move was set for the weekend, to a brownstone in a family-friendly neighborhood. "Dad," Owen called. "Rex wants to know if he can have an aquarium in his room too." Ethan knelt to meet his son. "I think Rex will have to share the aquarium with you, champ." "How about that?" Owen's face lit up. "With colorful fish, the most colorful we can find," Madison promised, ruffling his hair. The walk home was filled with excited plans for his new room, a dinosaur mural, star-like lights on the ceiling, a Jeep-shaped bed. "What about our room?" Ethan asked Madison gently. Her heart fluttered at the word our. "Something simple," she replied. "But with a big armchair by the window, so we can read stories when Owen visits us in the morning." On moving night, after hours of unpacking, they found a moment of peace in the small backyard garden. "I remember the first time I saw you," Ethan said softly, "at the cafe. You spilled latte on my jacket. And you asked for my number instead of the laundry bill," Madison finished, laughing. "I thought you were crazy. Maybe I was. Crazy about you." A gentle breeze carried the scent of the first flowers they had planted. "You know what amazes me most?" Madison asked. "How love can take so many different forms. The love I felt for you in Savannah, the unconditional love for Owen, and now this more mature, deeper love we're building." Ethan kissed the top of her head, a love that's weathered storms and still blossomed. A noise from the house caught their attention. Owen appeared at the patio door, sleepy, dragging his T-Rex. "I can't sleep. Rex is scared of the new room." Ethan and Madison shared a knowing smile. "Come here, buddy," Ethan called, making space for him on the bench. Noah snuggled in between them, his small body fitting perfectly. Together, they watched the stars appear in the clear city sky. "Look, a shooting star," Owen pointed. "Make a wish?" Madison whispered. Hugging him, Owen squeezed his eyes shut. When he opened them, his face was serene. "I don't need to wish for anything," he declared, with a child's profound simplicity. "I already have everything I wanted." Ethan felt tears well up. Madison reached over Owen's shoulders to intertwine her fingers with Ethan's. In that moment, under the starry sky, they were simply a family united by a love that had survived time, distance, and forgetting. Their new home slowly came to life. Ethan's office now featured a wall of Owen's art. The kitchen constantly smelled of Madison's cooking, and the garden flourished. Mornings were chaotic breakfasts, afternoons were a blend of work and homework, and nights were for stories and shared dreams. "Sometimes I wonder," Madison mused one evening, "if all we went through was necessary to bring us here." Ethan pulled her closer. "Maybe, but what matters is that we're here now, and I'm never letting you go again." The future stretched before them, a blank canvas waiting to be filled, and while the city hummed outside, in that house, one family celebrated their reclaimed love, a love that, like the stars, had always been there, patiently waiting to be rediscovered.